Hello and welcome to another video for the Regional Debate Development Program. This is a video series to help debaters across New Zealand develop their debating skills. In this video, I'm going to cover off for you how to improve your leaders' reply speeches. I'm going to offer you some good structure, and I'm also going to offer you some advice for how you can continue to improve beyond just the structural stuff in the speech. Before I get into it, I'm probably like a broken record by now, because you're probably quite far into this video series at this point, but I'm going to tell you nonetheless to please take notes because it's great to listen to the video. It's better if you can take notes, and it's the very best if you can practice. So take notes and then take them to practice after this video. Great, let's jump into it. What is your job as a leaders' reply speaker? Your job is to explain to the judge why it is that you are winning the debate. You're giving a biased judgment on the debate. There's a few steps to this that I would outline. I would outline 5 core steps to a leader's reply. Firstly, you need to give your intro, nice and easy. Then you need to explain what are your clashes, just give the headline of them. Your first clash, your second clash, and then you're out. I'm sure you're wondering what all those things are. Luckily, that's not the end of the video. So I'm actually going to explain out what each of those things are over the following slides. Let's go to the intro to start with. The intro. I've probably said this before in other speeches, but please do not welcome the judges and the fellow debaters. That is a formality of long dead debating that is well past, but it's something that seems to stick around in parts of New Zealand. So please don't do that. If you are going to do something, I would encourage you to do something emotive, something humorous, something that kind of talks to the broader debate. You can steal an intro I often use when I get stuck, which is kind of explain why what the world looks like. So I'll often be like, a world where X good thing happens, X other good thing happens. That's the world we stand for. You can do the reverse and be like, here's a world where this bad thing happens, like children are dying more, like there's going to be more war. That's the side that the opposition bench is standing for, judge. Those are really great because you're able to kind of, in broad summary, capture the debate in kind of a 10-second window and explain it. Great, let's jump further into it. Clashes. This is just giving them the titles of your clash points. But I'm also going to chat a little bit about what makes good clash points and how do you decide on them. So here, this step in your notes, you should be writing out, just give the titles of my clash points so that the judge knows what's coming. Be like, first clash point is this, second clash point is this. I'm going to get into those now. However, how do you select what are good clash points? What you need to do when you're up there is you need to pick out what the core fundamental issues are in the debate. They're probably the things you guys talked about the most, the things you argued about the most, the things that you think are going to help you win the debate or you think that are going to help opposition win the debate. You need to encapsulate them in these broad clash points because that's going to be very useful to you. If you're both trying to achieve the same benefit, like who helps migrant workers the most, it's very easy. You're like, the title is who helps migrant workers the most. But often, one of you will say, hey, look, we help the economy. And one of you will be like, hey, look, we help improve health outcomes. So you can make clash points that overlap those two things as well. That's totally fine. You can be like, this clashes on the economy versus the health sector. It just requires that as you're going through it, you're kind of comparing those things. You're like, look, they don't get their benefits. But even if they did, judge, look, it's probably just not as important as the health outcomes that we're proving to you. Great. The kind of 6 core steps that I work through in my first clash point. First, you need to give a title. I've kind of given some examples of that, but broadly, I just want to know what it is that you're going to be covering because leaders' replies can be quite messy because you don't pre-write anything before, like a first or a second speech. So because of that, it's very important to give good titles. Secondly, I would say, okay, judge, what is our bench's thrust? Like that's kind of what are the core things that we were trying to prove today. I don't want you to re-explain every mechanism, but I would just give them a quick list. I'd be like, hey, what was our thrust today? We were proving better health outcomes because there was going to be less secondhand smoking, there was going to be less strain on hospital systems, and there was going to be less whatever else your third mechanism was. I can't come up with one on the fly right now. What that does is it means that the judge knows what you've proved. It gives them a quick reminder. Then the next step is like, okay, well, what did they say in response? I kind of work through them one at a time. I'm like, firstly, they told us da-da-da-da-da. That was their first line of rebuttal. And then you need to do one of 2 things. You need to, 1, hopefully explain why you rebutted it already. Say, look, my third speaker's already dealt with this, or my second speaker has already dealt with this. They'll hopefully have already dealt with it in their rebuttal. If that's not the case, there's some cheeky things you can do. Technically, you're not allowed to do rebuttal. But what you are allowed to do is this, you are allowed to explain why it's not that relevant. You're like, okay, maybe it takes out this one thing, but our point still stands. That's totally fine. You're also allowed to kind of reframe it and be like, look, this has kind of become irrelevant now in the debate because of this other analysis we gave you. That's totally fine. You can't give fresh analysis, but you can use old stuff that you've had to kind of turn it around and say, look, it's not really relevant, our point still stands. Next, I would leverage the split contention. What do I mean by that? Your second speaker has probably given a split point, which is some positive material. If you can, and it fits under your Clash 1 banner, I would tie it in towards the back end and be like, look, Judge, even if you're buying this analysis, here's why the material from our split is like more important than this. Generally, I find that split points aren't enough to make clashes of their own, so I try to integrate them under my first clash to make them like help win the battle for the most important clash of the debate. I meant to flag at the top, so I'm just going to flag it now. Your first clash should be your most important clash. It should be the one that you think is debate winning. Finally, the fifth step is that you need to explain what you've achieved. So kind of run through and be like, hey, Judge, I've talked to you about what of our analysis is still standing. Great. I've also talked you through what of their analysis is not standing. So I've explained to you what I've achieved. Now what I want you to do is weight this analysis. This is kind of the core role of a leader's reply. Why is this really important and how do you do this? Weighting is really important because it explains to the judge why you're winning. Here's how you do it. You pretty much need to work out what is the points that are most important to us. Like, what are we actually going to win this debate on? And then I need you to explain to the judge why that is by far the most important thing that has ever been talked about in debating ever. Obviously, that's a little bit over-exaggerated when I say that, but I need you to explain why it's a really big group. I need you to explain why it's a really important group. I need you to explain to me why the health outcomes of children are more important than the economic benefits the economy are giving. The great thing is you've already heard all their analysis that they will ever give. So weighting is not just why our stuff's important. It's also about why it's more important than their stuff. So most of the time, the two things that you'll be proving are different. You need to explain to me, look, Judge, even if you bought all of their analysis and you didn't buy any of the rebuttal we gave you, here's why our stuff is more important anyway. It's kind of like the rebuttal stuff I taught you guys earlier. Great, that's Clash 1. I'm going to chat about Clash 2 now. I actually don't structure Clash 2 the same way as I structure Clash 1, which is unusual because I do the same in my substantives when I do them. They're all the same. And there's a reason for that that's quite specific. And the reason for that is because I actually don't believe in most debates. Obviously, there are some exceptions, so ignore me if that's the case. But I don't actually believe there is more than one debate-winning clash in the debate. I generally believe there's one clash that decides the debate. So you should make that your Clash 1. Clash 2 then is probably not as important. You shouldn't dedicate as much time. I spend about 70% of my time on Clash 1 and about 30% of my time on Clash 2. So how do I achieve any benefit with Clash 2? Well, what you want to do is like if point 1 falls a wash, which is just a debate term for like, look, it was really messy and both teams were kind of equal. No one got ahead in this. So this is what you put in as your backup option for what happens when the judge says that. You're like, okay, judge, here's my title, as you did before. What was our bench's thrust? And what I try to do is I group up a bunch of analysis under a title that is stuff that they broadly haven't responded to in the debate. These are often like points that or split points often can get ignored, substantives that they kind of ignored and worked past. Any of that analysis, group it up here and say, look, here was all of the analysis we gave you. They didn't actually deal with this, judge. And then I want you to weigh why that is so, so important, because if they haven't responded to it, it is true in the judge's mind, as long as it's not ridiculous. So now you want to explain why this is like the most important thing ever. You're like, judge, this is so important. I can't believe they didn't respond to it. And that's going to give you a fallback. The judge is probably not going to buy that this is actually the most important stuff in the debate. But what you want to happen is if they're like, okay, clash won, I think it was equal. Then you want them to be like, okay, well, what's the next most important thing? You want them to instantly think, it was that second clash and they didn't respond. I'm going to give the debate to these guys because they're such excellent debaters. So that's what you want to be doing here. Great, that's clash 2. Outro. I like to, at the end of my leaders reply speeches, do a little bit of a summary in kind of the different ways I won, using the magic words even if, much like we talked about in our rebuttal speeches. So what you need to do here is you need to talk about how did you win. So you're going to be like, okay, here's how we won. Okay, we told you that we won the first clash through our arguments. We told you they didn't win the debate through their arguments. And even if you didn't believe any of that, we also gave you a bunch of analysis that they didn't respond to, Judge, which was your second clash, that we could win the debate on without any of that analysis. So what you want to be going through is like, here's all the different ways you could give us a victory, Judge. If it's just one, that's totally fine. It's not the end of the world. Often there is just one way you're winning the debate. But if there are multiple ways that you can win the debate, tell the judge those multiple ways so that they can be thinking about both of them. Because after the speech, they're about to go and judge the debate. So you want them thinking about how you can win. And if you can tell them how they can give you the win, that's going to make their job easier. And judges like to give wins to the teams that make their job easy to give them the win. Actually, can we go back to the past slide because I've just remembered something. Second clash. So if you can jump back into your notes, maybe make this note in red pen or marker. You know how I said, talk about the things they didn't respond to? That is correct. But what I absolutely do not want to see from debaters in New Zealand is you saying they didn't respond to it if they did respond to it. Because that's really embarrassing, guys. And the judges will actually get quite mad at you because it's not cool to call the other team out if they didn't actually do it. So be very careful when you're putting stuff into your second clash. Make sure that you've checked with your other teammates that they didn't hear them respond to it either. It's just something I want to flag for you guys. Great. Go back. That's the end of all this. Actually, it's not. I've just been told there's a bonus tip, which is excellent. Bonus tip, take them at their best. I've told this to third speakers, but please do not take the team at some obscure thing they said that didn't really represent their case. Don't straw man an argument that doesn't actually represent their team. I want you to say, hey, look, this is what they were saying. You know, don't do the mechanization for them, but by like, hey, look, they missed some analysis here, but broadly, Judge, this is what I think they were trying to prove. I know they didn't do enough analysis, but just like, I'm going to deal with them at their best. You can actually say those words. I'm going to take them at their best, which is this. That's what I want you to do, because if you can beat them at their best, you're going to win the debate. If you beat them at their worst, and the judge believes them at their best, you're going to lose. So please take them at their best. This is feedback I hear judges giving way too much across New Zealand. So please remember that when you go out to debate. Please be generous. Please take teams at their best. It's in your interest to do so. Thank you so much for tuning in for another video from the Regional Debate Development Program. I hope this has really helped. I encourage you to go out and practice this in a practice debate. If you can't do it with your friends right now in a practice debate, you can tune in to New Zealand Schools Debating practice debates, which are online from all the previous years, lots and lots of debaters there. And you can watch one of those videos and pretend you're doing the leader's reply for one of those teams. Thank you once again. I wish you all the very best with your next debate, and happy debating.